Hello, everyone, and welcome to the January 12th edition of the Ignition News. This is a very special episode of the Ignition News because it represents about 2 weeks of us doing this very hard work to put this together for your daily news show. But we are also just one day away from the release of Season 2 of Ignite, Fighting Fascism in the Age of Its Rise. That has been really a signature project of what we've been trying to do here on Rebel Radio. Ignite is your field guide to fighting fascism. All around me, people always tell me that they feel hopeless or they feel like they can't do anything to stand up for their personal rights or to fight for their democracy. Well, I'm more than happy to tell you that we put together a field guide here on our network, Rebel Radio, to fight fascism. With 12 episodes and 4 bonus episodes, Season 2 now is going to be more action-oriented than we ever imagined. Download Ignite, Season 1, and tomorrow, Episode 1 of Season 2. Let's get into the news. Good morning. We're covering 4 connected stories today that really create a clear picture of what happens when authoritarian impulses meet American streets. A federal agent shoots and kills a United States citizen in Minneapolis. A congresswoman warns what happens as a result of that. Tens of thousands take to the streets in protest. And what finally happens, the real cracks in the authoritarian's power. So let's get into it. As you well know now, on January 7th at approximately midday, ICE agent Jonathan Ross shot and killed 37-year-old Renee Good in South Minneapolis. 3 shots through her windshield. This killed Renee Good instantly. Renee was a writer, a poet, a wife, and a mother of 3. She was a United States citizen, and she was documenting ICE operations in her neighborhood. Now let's talk about what the federal government said happened versus what actually happened. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem called it an act of domestic terrorism. DHS claimed that Renee weaponized her vehicle, and as we've discussed many times, this is actually a tactic that ICE and DHS have been using for more than a decade. That's the official story. But the evidence, including narratives from people like Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, reviewed the footage and called the narrative what it was: bullshit. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara noted that the professional law enforcement agencies train intensely to minimize the risk of shooting into vehicles. He said it was obviously very concerning when there's a shooting into a vehicle of someone who is not armed. And here's the critical part. DHS has a 2018 policy memo that explicitly states DHS law enforcement officers are prohibited from discharging firearms at the operator of a moving vehicle, except in justified deadly force situations. Their own rules raise questions about whether this situation was appropriate. But ICE Barbie, Kristi Noem, did not wait for an investigation. She declared the officer acted correctly within hours. That is not standard procedures. That's a cover-up, and it's a cover-up in real time. And here on the Ignition News, we are not going to allow the administration to bury this story. We're going to continue to cast light on this story until there is accountability. A former DHS official privately expressed shock at how quickly the department rushed to judgment. He told CNN, "I don't recognize my former agency. This is truly heartbreaking." And of course, now we know that DHS has cut out the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, who tried to investigate. And the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, which is overseen by Harmeet Dillon, was told they will not play a role in this investigation. That is the division responsible for investigating civil rights violations, and they were explicitly told to stand down. This is at least the 9th time ICE agents have opened fire on people. 5 people have now been killed, and it has always been the same MO. People, quote, weaponizing their vehicles. Well, we are going to weaponize the truth. On some positive note here, her family, Renee Good's family, started a GoFundMe. As of today, as of this recording, it has raised over $1.5 million. Obviously, $1.5 million is never going to replace the value of a human life, but it is good to know that her family is going to be taken care of. Good job, America. Where does this lead? Where does this go? Let's talk about what happens now. 2,000, 3,000 federal agents in Minneapolis. DHS has already announced that this is the, quote, the largest DHS operation in history. They've already arrested 1,400 people since December. And it's at least partially tied to this fake allegation from Nick Shirley, this video that he went around about Somali residents, allegations that have been investigated by state and federal authorities for years. Amy Klobuchar noted there are now more ICE officers in Minnesota than the combined police forces of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Think about that. Think about what that tells you. On January 10th, 3 members of Congress, Representative Ilhan Omar, Angie Craig, and Kelly Morrison, attempted to conduct oversight at the Whipple Federal Building outside of the ICE detention center. They were not allowed to enter. They were told to wait, and then they were kicked out. Ilhan Omar said that this order to deny them access maybe came from Washington. DHS changed their policy on January 8th, the day after Renee Good was killed, requiring lawmakers to now schedule visits at least 7 days in advance. DHS claims this was in response to escalating riots and political violence. That's the setup. Now, here's what Ilhan Omar is telling us. She says, and I quote, "What we are seeing right now, not only from the surge of 2,000 federal agents, now we apparently have another 1,000 coming in, is essentially to create this environment where people feel intimidated, threatened, and terrorized. And I think the ultimate goal of Kristi Noem and President Trump is to agitate people enough where they are able to invoke the Insurrection Act and declare martial law." She said, "There is no justification to describe what is taking place in Minneapolis at this moment. There is no justifiable reason why this number of agents is here in our state. This is not hyperbole. This, my friends, is a sitting congresswoman representing the community under siege, describing a deliberate pattern of provocation." Excuse me, it's a tough story to get through. Minneapolis schools have canceled classes for the remainder of last week. Think about that. They are protecting the citizens, the children of the community, from the federal government. And Governor Walz, of course, activated the state emergency guard. DHS tweeted sort of an antagonistic tweet on Tuesday morning. "Good morning, Minneapolis." That is not law enforcement. That, my friends, is psychological warfare. But keep your head up. Let me tell you why. Welcome to the Ignition News. Please consider following along your favorite podcasting platform so that we can grow this platform to help deliver the truth. It is not all doom and gloom, my friends. Let us take to the streets. The response, whether you've seen it or not, has been massive. Over 1,000 protests were planned for this past weekend under the slogan, "Ice Out for Good," a reference to both the agency and to Renee Good herself. Tens of thousands marched in Minneapolis alone. Protests have erupted in Chicago, New York City, D.C., Boston, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Buffalo, Kansas City, and dozens of other cities. In Minneapolis, protesters gathered at Powderhorn Park in 20-degree weather, and they said, "Ice will melt." Friday night saw what police call a noise protest in downtown Minneapolis, where about 1,000 people gathered outside of hotels where ICE agents were believed to be staying. They banged on drums, blew whistles, and shined lights into windows. The explicit goal was to make sure none of those hotels could sleep. A smaller group split off and damaged some hotel windows. 29 people were arrested. One police officer was injured by a chunk of ice thrown at officers. Mayor Frey condemned the property damage, but praised the vast majority of people who remained silent. He said, "People are standing up to Donald Trump's chaos, not with our own brand of chaos, but with care and unity." Police declared the protests unlawful assembly and deployed Minnesota State troopers in riot gear. Federal agents fired pepper balls at protesters outside of the Whipple Federal Building. Let me read you a quote from Cameron Kritkost, a 31-year-old grocery store worker who protested on Saturday. "If more ICE officers are deployed to the streets, especially a place here where there's very clear public opposition to the terrorism of our neighborhoods, I'm very nervous that there's going to be more violence." And that is the fear now. That's the fear. Comedian John Mulaney postponed his Minneapolis show scheduled for this weekend, writing, "What's happening in your city is heartbreaking. I don't feel comfortable asking thousands of people in each night to leave their homes, gather at the venue, and then make their way home when the situation is so unsafe." This is what happens in an American city under occupation. The people in that city are responding the way Americans have always responded to tyranny. They are organizing, they're documenting, and they're refusing to stay silent. Friends, now is the time to stand up to your government. Tyranny grows in darkness and silence. We must take to the streets and show our resistance to this growing wave of fascism. But we can't allow ourselves to be baited into what this administration wants. They are going to take any act of violence, whether that is intentional or an agent provocateur, perhaps a federal agent provocateur, and they're going to use that to declare martial law. Now, if you want to know, how can I fight this fascism and not end up in jail? Well, first of all, something you'll learn in Ignite, fighting fascism in the age of its rise, is that you can't fight fascism in jail. But there are plenty of ways that you can stand up more than just calling your congressperson. So download season 1 and get ready for season 2. Now we're here, my friends, in our last stories where things get interesting. You would think that with this massive onslaught of federal power, that it was a strong government, a strong president. But the reality is, the president's power is fracturing, and he's actually facing real fractures in unity in the Republican Party. It is happening across multiple fronts simultaneously. 5 Republican senators voted with Democrats to advance a war powers resolution that would limit Trump's ability to conduct further attacks against Venezuela. The vote was 52-47. Only 47 people could vote for the 47th president, and he lost. Trump responded by saying these 5 senators should never be elected to office again. Well, they don't seem to think so, and they don't seem afraid of him. Senator Rand Paul told reporters this is more of an academic debate than it is an anti-Donald Trump debate. Todd Young said a drawn-out campaign in Venezuela involving the American military would be the opposite of President Trump's goal at ending foreign entanglements. Meanwhile, 17 House Republicans broke with party leadership to vote with Democrats on extending the Affordable Care Act. These subsidies expired at the end of 2025, resulting in massive premium increases. Many of those 17 Republicans are running in competitive districts. They're already getting attacked by Democrats over rising healthcare costs. Representative Derek Van Orden of Wisconsin, who voted for the extension, posted, "I have long opposed the damage the Unaffordable Care Act has done to our country, but I will not watch the Minnesotans lose healthcare access because Democrats let their own law collapse. Ouch." Well, it's still a win. That's not principle, by the way. That's somebody fighting for his political life. But you know what? I'll take it. Because even though he lied, his vote is going to allow millions of more people to have access to affordable healthcare. Of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is officially out of Congress. And then we mean, Speaker Mike Johnson can only lose 2 House votes now. Republican votes on any given issue can only be upheld by 2 votes. And one of those votes, by the way, Thomas Massie of Kentucky regularly votes against the president on policies. So essentially, Mike Johnson has a 1-vote margin in the House of Representatives. And that's not all. 38%. That's the president's floor of approval. The president of the United States is disliked by a vast majority of the people of this country. They are entering into an election year with a razor-thin House majority. Republicans are separating and distancing themselves from the president, and his approval rating is tanking and dropping fast. If Democrats take power in the House of Representatives, it's going to mean oversight, investigation, subpoenas, and actual power back in the hands of the people. You probably well know, if you've been listening to the Ignition News for some time, that I am not a Democrat. I am not a member of the Democratic Party establishment. And I could not think of a worse response to this oncoming wave of fascism than we have seen from our elected Democratic representatives. Chuck Schumer is an American embarrassment. Hakeem Jeffries has squandered what is possibly one of the best times in American history to be an American political opposition party. These are weak men, and we deserve strong leaders in the U.S. House of Representatives. But I cannot deny that our efforts must be in gaining control of the House of Representatives. In Ignite, Fighting Fascism of the Age of Its Rise, I'm going to teach you how to do exactly that. In fact, the first episodes of Season 2 are aimed specifically at that. In Episode 1 and Episode 2, I'm going to teach you how to steal an election. And we're going to take the momentum we have to add accountability, oversight, and power back to the American people. A lot of people are discouraged and afraid of what's happening in this country right now, but I am energized, and I want you to be energized as well. So let's connect these stories. You have a federal agent killing a United States citizen, the government lying about it. A congresswoman has warned us this could be martial law. Tens of thousands of Americans take to the street, and Republicans start breaking ranks with the president because they're more afraid of voters than they are of the president. This is a pattern. This is how power grabs work. You flood a city with armed agents, you create chaos, you kill someone, you lie, you intimidate local officials, you deny oversight, and then you wait for the response to escalate so you can declare an emergency and grab more power. But Ilhan Omar sees it, Mayor Frey sees it, and you see it too. We are more powerful than this ever-weakening president. We are more powerful than the liars who support his tyrannical agenda. If you're not in Minnesota, pay attention anyways, because if they get away with this in Minneapolis, they will come to your door. As the vice president, J.D. Vance, said, remember who sacrificed her freedom. Renee Nicole Good, an American writer, a poet, a wife, and a mother, an American citizen killed on American streets by her own government for the crime of documenting what they were doing. That's the show for today, January 12th, 2026. But let me close out with one more thing. It is in the darkest moments, in the darkest times, that people throughout history have found the necessary strength to pull through just one more day, just one more hour, just one more minute. We are, no doubt, at a very dangerous time in this country, perhaps the most dangerous time in your lifetime. And whenever I hear someone say that, I invariably see someone criticize them for saying that perhaps some previous struggle in American history was more difficult, or that people suffered and struggled more than someone has in the past. And I think this is a foolish narrative because it ignores the obvious truth. Whether this is or is not the most dangerous time in American history, or whether democracy is or is not at its most perilous in American history, is irrelevant. The true American patriots of this country understand that our goal is liberation, the freedom of all people. And yes, whether that is people we like or people we do not like. My friends, this is a difficult time, but it will be solved by us going to the streets, sharing our voices, providing oversight, and shining a light. I say this all the time. The weak men of our country in this time, they have put their heads down, and they're attempting to hide from this monster of fascism by hiding in the dark, by turning out the lights. They believe that the monster won't be able to see them, and if they hide long enough, they will emerge from this tyranny. But the reality is, my friends, the monster grows in darkness. Tyranny grows in darkness, and it is upon us to shine the light. Because when we do, what we see after all is that the monster never was as big or powerful as he wanted us to believe. And for every one of us that shines a light, we do one thing. We advance the monster further and further into the corner with more and more light. And the more of us that shine the lights on this tyranny, the smaller and smaller the monster becomes, until eventually the room is filled with the light of freedom, and the monster is no more. So if you're feeling scared, if you're feeling nervous, if you're feeling like you don't know what to do, be a light, whether that's in your community, your neighborhood, or in your family. The monster grows in darkness. Go be a light. That's our show for today. Thanks for following us here on the Ignition News. Tomorrow, 8:38 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Episode 1 of Season 2 of Ignite, Fighting Fascism in the Age of Its Rise, is yours for the taking. Welcome to the Ignition News, your unfiltered, uncensored source for the actual truth in what is happening in the United States of America and around the world. We are not bought by the billionaires. We are here to be your source of truth in a time where truth matters more than it ever has. Be sure to follow along with your favorite platform on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Substack. Let's get busy with the truth. Welcome to the Ignition News. Let's ignite.